and telling people that he was able to photograph the dead, like the deceased people of the world. And he sold people pictures of ghosts. So you would come to his studio and you would sit there and he would take your photo and then he would give you a photo of you and then the ghostly-like picture of a person in your family or in your life that had passed. And this was, at the time, obviously, photography was brand new, a couple decades old. It was shocking in the first place that you could take pictures of people, right? Like that didn't exist. Like the cultural context is extremely important. And so it was so brand new that people were like, yeah, why not? Probably is able to photograph ghosts, right? Like 10 years before we couldn't photograph people, now we can photograph ghosts. This is technology, this is how it works. And this guy makes a fortune, takes people, like sells people the promise of this, goes on to photograph Abraham Lincoln's wife after Lincoln is assassinated. And when I talk about the cultural moment, it's important here in particular to remember that this, like the moment where this happens, the Civil War in the US had just taken place. And so everybody had lost, like most everybody had lost somebody in the war.
Welcome to Latinx in Power. Today we are talking with Juliana Castro Varón. She's a designer, writer, technologist, and the founder of Cita Press, with a decade of experience working for museums, universities, nonprofits, and agencies. She strives to lead projects to spark curiosity, raise questions, and charm audiences. Juliana is a fellow at Harvard University, where she researches the history of misleading photo manipulation and from Darkroom to AI. I'm so excited about this conversation. I can't wait. Welcome, Juliana.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. You made a wonderful presentation. I have nothing to add. Thank you so much.
Incredible. I'm so excited. I have been following you for a while. I don't know like how I found you, maybe in a list, like I don't know. So I have been following you. So I'm very excited with this conversation. I'm a former designer, so like I feel like design is always like really close to my heart. And in this episode, Juliana will share more about the evolution of image manipulation, challenges in publishing, navigating creativity and accessibility in design, and balancing creative roles. But first things first, what does it mean to be a Latina for you?
I mean, I think culture and heritage influence my work and my life in both like visible and invisible ways. I don't like miss food or rain or sun every day, sun a little bit. But I do miss people and culture and language. And I think, I mean, we all are a sort of collection of the things we've lived and experienced. And I do think there is kind of a shared humor and energy to Latin American people. And I like that. And so I miss kind of like and strive to find it here, the sort of energy that we share. So I'm very excited to be here because of that.
I love what you said, that missing culture. It's interesting because I feel like for me, I try to express in a way, but maybe I couldn't do it. I was like focusing on like some specific things, but you translated super well. Missing culture, that's so interesting. And perhaps in my case, like tropical fruits. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yes, oh my gosh, yes. Fruits and juices, like freshly squeezed juice. You don't have, like, they give you Tropicana here everywhere. It's just like, no, orange juice out of the orange.
Yes. And even, I don't know, I have strong feelings about the orange juice here. It's different and I don't like it. It's just like, even if it is like from like an actual fruit, I don't know.
It's different. It's different fruits.
Yes, totally. And you have witnessed the evolution of image manipulation from traditional dark rooms techniques to the era of artificial intelligence. And what impact has this progression had in your career and perhaps in yourself as well?
So, I mean, I think there are like three different factors that influence how we interact with images. One is the cultural moment, and I'll tell you a story to kind of like riff off that. The other one is how they're distributed, right? Right now we have the internet, but before images came mainly either through like visiting cards or the newspaper. And then before they came through like email, but we didn't have social media. So there was still a kind of a direct type of communication or a platform based like a newspaper. And then how the technology works. There's one story that I like telling a lot. There is this one guy who lived actually not far from where I live. I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he kind of started doing photographs, and he was like just really taken with the art of photography. This is in the 1800s, mid 1800s, and he started creating photographs and telling people that he was able to photograph the dead, like the deceased people of the world. And he sold people pictures of ghosts. So you would come to his studio and you would sit there and he would take your photo and then he would give you a photo of you and then the ghostly like picture of a person in your family or in your life that had passed. And this was, at the time, obviously, photography was brand new, a couple decades old. It was shocking in the first place that you could take pictures of people, right? Like electricity didn't exist. Like the cultural context is extremely important. And so it was so brand new that people were like, yeah, why not? Probably is able to photograph ghosts, right? Like 10 years before we couldn't photograph people, now we can photograph ghosts. This is technology, this is how it works. And this guy makes a fortune, takes people, like sells people on the promise of this, goes on to photograph Abraham Lincoln's wife after Lincoln is assassinated. And when I talk about the cultural moment, it's important here in particular to remember that this, like the moment where this happens, the Civil War in the US had just taken place. And so everybody had lost, like most everybody had lost somebody in the war. And they were very eager to connect with them. And this kind of connection and this comfort was promised through the photographs. And I think there is like in what may happen with AI, a lot of like kind of like what we want AI to do for us is as crucial as what AI does, right? Like the qualities that we give AI and the expectations that we put on AI influence very much what will happen, I believe. And I think, I mean, images are very subjective. They have always been subjective. So I'm not, I mean, I think we're gonna come up with ways of accounting for the images that are unreal, like false. But it's important that, like, for example, between the moment in which this guy, William Lumler, was taking the photographs to the moment that they discovered that taking photographs of ghosts didn't happen, this guy made a fortune. He was taken to court for it, for fraud. And he was acquitted because they couldn't prove that he had fabricated the images. They couldn't prove that the ghosts didn't exist and weren't actually photographed, which is just fascinating to me because that's a little bit of how we relate to technology nowadays. We don't, like, it's really hard to explain exactly why is it that AI would produce some results. So it's mysterious and it's fascinating. I went a little long with that anecdote, but I just love that story.
Yeah, that's such an interesting story because we can relate to that, although the technology is much ahead of that, and sometimes it's challenging, right? I feel like in the past, when something, I don't know, it was like low quality, or maybe it's just something that you know that it was made up because you could see it, and now it's different at the same time because it's just like the quality is so much better. And I don't know, I quite often I think about my mom a lot because we talk a lot about technology. And sometimes I tell her, like, you cannot trust this website because it's obvious that it's fake and it's not legit. And she's like, why? I don't understand. It's like, it is in the website. And I think about myself in the future because I will be like her, probably. So it's so interesting.
Yeah, there's like a literacy to understand that something is a scam, and you don't come with it. You don't come out just being like, yeah, obviously I'm not. It's a sort of educational to some degree, right? And I don't mean this in the traditional sense. I mean this in the sense of exposure, right? Like you've seen the memes of the Nigerian prince giving you money through the, like you don't fall for it, but that doesn't mean it's not. We don't fall for Photoshop images that look very realistic 20, 30 years ago. Because we've kind of like trained our eyes, especially if you have a background in design, like you can tell. But we won't always be able to tell. They're just gonna get better.
Yeah, that's so scary. How do you feel about that?
I am more an optimist for a person who's very informed. In that, I do think there's gonna be kind of like a lot of victims in the kind of learning curve. But I think in kind of like the general impact, it's gonna be positive, and I think it's important to just kind of like account for all the instances in which you won't. Mainly because there's very little stopping it, if that makes sense, right? Like I think there are many arguments to stop it, and it's not gonna stop. The development of AI is not gonna stop. So whatever, like I don't think it's worth making an argument to stop it, but there are many, many arguments to be made about kind of accounting for its risks, its current contemporary risks, and not kind of like the risks of when the technology hits, and because it's I think it's important to care about the now. But I think it's also important to not come at it with a defeating mindset, because we have had this like nothing is true anymore many times. We had it with Photoshop, we had it with digital photographs. There was a full time where photographers would not even be sent to report journalistic stories with digital cameras. They would only go with film because film was more real. And now we know that a camera, I mean, like a photo is a photo is a photo. But now there's AI. So is that a photo? Like just kind of like the terms and the ways in which how we talk about reality and its representation have changed radically. And I don't think this is either the end of truth.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And I'd love for you to share more about the Cita Press, and also if you could share with us like the challenges and the success you have encountering, like bridging linguistic and cultural gaps in the publishing industry.
Yes, let's see. I mean, I think there's a sort of otherness that comes with bridging those gaps between language and culture and so on. And it's sort of a double-edged sword. Like on one hand, you have an advantage. You have a kind of access to an extra world of understanding and language and influence. And then on the other one, I mean, you have that otherness I'm talking about, or you have an accent or a tacit expectation put onto you, or I think the main challenge that I encountered, I moved to the US in 2016. So it's been 8 years. I mean, I was back in Colombia during the pandemic for a little bit, but and I've spoken English for many years. I learned it in school, but there was kind of a gap between speaking English and being able to sophisticatedly say what I think, what I want to express in English. I always thought of myself as a sophisticated thinker, and then when I would speak, it would just come up so blunt, so kind of see, this is exactly what's happening right now. And I think that the main challenge has been just to kind of like convince myself that I am equally smart. and that my thoughts, even though they come half baked and they have to kind of, sometimes they happen in translation. Right now, they just kind of come out in English because that's where I speak the most. But I think initially I thought it was a negative, kind of a challenge, as you say. But now I think it's an extra skill, I do extra work, and I think that extra work pays off, right? Like in how I think about things, I have to think about them twice. I think about them with like two glasses, I guess. And in terms of like successes, I mean, I am able to, I can do it, right? Like I'm in a podcast speaking in English, whatever. Like I think it's just, it's done because I'm doing it. So I guess, yeah, does that answer your, do you relate to this as a Portuguese speaking person?
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to ask you because I feel like there's the moment where you feel comfortable in the language and you feel like capable as you are in your own tongue. But also, like to me, I felt like there's this moment where I could be my own self in English. And it took me a while. I'm a weird person in Portuguese. I'm very comfortable with my weirdness and I enjoy that. But I felt like in English, it was just like this different person, especially because I have a friend, she's a really good friend, and she told me once that I was very polite. And we worked together and I didn't understand what she meant. And I think it took me years to understand what she really meant. And I think it was I I speak with my friends the way I speak with folks at work. And the way I write to my friends is the same way I do. Like I use like work language, like business language to speak with my friends, you know? And I understand that's weird. And I think like now I'm changing that because just like I just don't want to be this person anymore.
I completely get that. I think, yeah, yeah, like you just kind of put on your like international English speaking hat, and then yeah, I mean, I think it happened to me when I started, like when I can make people laugh in English. I'm like, yes, because I just felt like there was just like like an abyss between conversational funny Spanish, where you can be quick and witty and just so fast that you can anticipate the funny thing, and in English it's so hard again because you're like just doing double work. So it's just slowly starting to happen that I'm able to just be like, this, like, can say things quickly and be funny, and it's just like I feel like I'm like tapping onto myself when I do that in a way.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I really like those conversations because I feel like probably for a lot of folks who are listening to us, a lot of them are immigrants. They live in the second language, first generation, and we might feel alone or behind or whatever. And it's just like so good to hear other people talking and sharing about that because I think we have a lot of similarities. And I think with this podcast, as I'm also talking with folks like first generation, second generation, there's like a lot of similarities still. So I love to talk about that.
Well, I feel like this is a place to do so.
And I have a funny story to tell. I was in this like stand-up comedy thing, and they were like, it was very participative, and they asked for like someone's like phone, and I was like, whatever. I gave my phone, and they checked my message. First of all, I don't send SMS because I use WhatsApp. Like I'm a Latina, come on. And then the few messages that I had, they were like making jokes, like making like a funny way, like preserving my privacy, but like making fun of like my messages. And they were like so boring because it was the work language that I used, And I think after that, it was like, oh my God, I'm like so boring in English. I need to change that.
No, but like if they're just seeing those, you're giving them nothing. They needed to
Yeah.
like what's up.
Yes. But it was all in Portuguese, so, but it was interesting. And I wanted to ask you, like, can you share more about Cita Press as well? I'd love you to share more.
Yeah, so Cita Press is it's a publisher, it's a publishing project. It's also a design studio, a sort of library of books written by women. Every single book that we published in both English and Spanish is free. So we make ebooks accessible. We mainly publish books that are in the public domain. That is, books that are that the copyright either expired or was never put onto it in the first place. And what we do is that we pair contemporary writers and designers, and they come in to kind of land a book from, say, the 1800s or the 1500s sometimes, and land it in the present. So they write an introduction that says, this is why this is an important book. This is why this is a feminist book in 2024. And these are why all the reasons why it's important to read this person in the present. And then they do a badass cover for the book to kind of like also again just land the book for the readers of today. And we publish books in English and Spanish. We are now funded by the Mellon Foundation. And we have now launched a design studio. So we just kind of do all the editorial and design work that we do for our books for clients. And so if you go to our website, you'll find both find books kind of that you can download and print, that you can have a zine like, and I'll show you. I have one right here. You can print, and then you can just make it yourself. We have others that are a little like have more pages, so then you can buy those online. You can also find them for free as an ebook, as a PDF, or on our website. And then we built an accessible interactive thing for you to kind of read it as if you were reading it on an ebook. So it has size and type change and length and width and all the things that designers care about. And we are always kind of looking to connect with readers in ways that go beyond the book reading. So we do book binding workshops and but what else we do? We do reading guides for each of the books. And then we do, social media content about the books that we published. Yeah, so come check it out. I started it when I was a master's student, and it was my thesis. And it was me asking for friends to do favors and just like donate their time to do the covers for free. And now we pay our contributors now. That was just when I was a student. I'm just doing it by myself and just asking people to do it because they like the promise of making books accessible. But now we pay our contributors, and you should go to our website and check our books out.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I think it's just like perfect combination, like books, cool designs, and like having like books accessible. That's incredible. And I wanted to ask you, how do you navigate the intersection of creativity and accessibility?
I think it's very important it's very important to think about all the ways in which people can interact with your content. And especially like if we think about like ourselves, like I'm going to use one example to kind of make this argument. When I watch TV, I watch TV with subtitles because especially when I watch British shows, and the only exception is when I'm watching stand-up comedy, because I don't want the joke to be given to me before the subtitles. Otherwise, I watch TV with subtitles every single time. And that is a feature that was not built for me, immigrant person. It's a feature that was built for people who couldn't hear or didn't hear very well. And it was designed for like a different user in mind, and I benefit from it. So I think of accessibility in terms of like, there are features that serve some people that actually will serve, like, could serve everybody, just like positive features, or thinking about like all the ways in which people can interact with one content is always positive, not only for those people, but for everybody. And of course, I mean, I think it's important we do kind of like all the alt text images and all the more classical kind of accessibility standards, but I think and subtitles and so on. But I do think we've tried to build, especially in the reader, some agency for the user to kind of choose what is it that is an acceptable type size, right? And you can blow it up a lot, and it kind of looks kind of cool, like, or you can like space it out. So I think kind of the mix of agency for the user and just thinking of as the features, just as features that should be default, and the agency of the user in playing with them should just exist by default.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned that I feel a lot of people don't realize how like everyone in fact benefits from like accessibility. So this is like a very, very important point to keep in mind for like everyone. And another topic that I wanted to discuss more, I feel especially for like makers, those like management skills, it might be something that doesn't come naturally for them, and something perhaps is like a skill they need to develop over time, and something that they struggle. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, like how do you manage your time and your energy to play both of those roles, a maker and a manager? And if there's like any side you have want to share with anyone who's listening to us.
I am very lucky that I work in things where people are really excited about the work that we do. And that makes it easy because then we are kind of all together working towards one big goal, whether it be making cute books or making a cool website or so on. I think it's just exciting to work with people who are creative, and I think it's important to work with people who do things differently. So I try to kind of like match the work of managing and kind of like being a sort of steward of creativity of others, just kind of caring for the creative work and the work that others have to do, and create an environment in which their creativity can thrive the same way. Create the environment that kind of is mission oriented, which is just like celebrate the work of women, celebrate the work of creative people, and work towards create environments where people want to read those. So I think they feed off each other. And I think it's just about kind of creating good environments. We're a small team, which also helps kind of like have nimble processes. I think that's very different in like bigger teams and siloed teams. So I don't have any advice in there, but I think, I mean, just conversation and communication.
Yeah. And I feel very inspired to talk with someone like you, and I love how you have like different skills and play so many different roles: founder, academia, consulting, design, writing. And I feel like it's very inspiring, and at the same time I understand that sometimes people might look at it and they're like, oh, they are unrelated, but I definitely can see how they also relate so much to each other. So is there like anything you want to share with folks that might be thinking about that? For example, and this pod has been like 3 years that I'm doing this podcast, and what I keep hearing, and people would say, oh, I did that, and now I do this other thing, and I know how they are related, how they actually help me. And I love the sense that things doesn't need to be linear, and at the same time, I feel like doing things just for fun. Maybe you're curious about something, you can actually do it. And I feel it's very powerful, especially for immigrants, like Latin American folks, Caribbean folks, which is the focus of this podcast. So I love if there's anything you want to share with us about this.
I mean, first of all, yeah, I think everything that I do is related. Sometimes it's challenging to convince future employers that that's the case. But I don't know if you've been to acupuncture, but I was there last week, and they just put a needle on your toe to fix your back. Just like makes no sense, but of course it makes sense, right? Like it's your body. It's like you just like it's all connected. I think it works a little bit like that. I do think of myself as a designer first, and so kind of like I see kind of the legs, if you wish, of it being just like a person who thinks about problem solving and product-based stuff and an audience and users. Like that's kind of like my baseline of work. And then on top of that, I build products, and I when I am a consultant, I kind of come in with the eyes of a designer and with the training of design thinking and design methodologies to kind of help assess things. But I think they're related, and I think and I want them to be, right? I think, of course, eventually it's likely that then I kind of like take more of one career path. But so far, for as long as I'm allowed, I like the idea of kind of letting many things influence the type of work I do.
I love that. That's very inspiring. I feel like very excited about it. And I think it comes to also storytelling, right? For folks who are perhaps like interviewing, looking for a job, it's also like the way you tell the story matters, because perhaps for the other person, it might not make sense, but you can guide them and you can help them like to make sense out of like all those different roles and perhaps different skills that you have.
Yes, absolutely. I think storytelling is crucial. I think like it's just useful to talk about design and to talk about things and to have conversations with people and just kind of enjoy each other too.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of resources, is there anything that you feel it helped in your journey that you want to share with us today?
There's one book that I've read already a couple of years ago that I liked a lot. It's called How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. Yeah, and it's a very beautiful book to think about technology, but also just kind of day-to-day attention guiding, and then kind of paying closer attention to things around me is also very useful. And I like that book a lot too, and kind of like also how I relate to making technology and making things. And then any book from Cita Press is great too.
Yes, that's awesome. I love that. I love the How to Do Nothing book. I read some years ago as well. And I love how like at first it might be not, you might think, oh, it's not related to technology, but it's just like so related, which is just, I think folks who are in tech, they should read this book. And then, Juliana, we are getting to the end of this episode. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to leave the last minutes for you to share anything you want to share. And we are going to link to the description of this episode, like everything you are sharing with us today, including your LinkedIn, Cita Press website, and the book that you just shared as well.
Great. Thank you.